Welcome back to Your Strategist is In. I'm Dr. Loren M. Hill. Well, we've spent plenty of time talking about disruption in higher education, but today I want to name something even more pressing. We don't have a shortage of disruption. We have a shortage of leadership. Faculty, staff, and students are all telling me, and maybe you've said this too, our leaders are invisible, decisions feel reactive, and we're just left to figure out things on our own. In fact, a 2023 survey of more than 3,000 faculty and staff found that trust and morale are directly tied to leadership, visibility, and communication. And right now, too many people say they're operating without both. So let's talk about leadership in the gap today, what it looks like, why it matters, and how you can step into it, whether you hold title or not. Let me share a story that reflects dozens of coaching conversations I've had. Let's talk about Diana. We'll call her Diana, a mid-level administrator who told me, I feel like my dean is hiding. We get emails, but no direction. My team is exhausted, and I'm stuck in the middle trying to keep everyone afloat. That sense of drift is not just Dana. In higher ed today, when leaders go quiet, the community fills in the story with its own anxiety. And research confirms it. In one study published in the Open Journal of Leadership, most women in higher ed reported their trust in leadership hovered around neutral, not high, not low, just uncertain. As we know, uncertainty breeds doubt. So, where do you see the leadership gap most clearly in your role or your campus? Now, naming the gap is important, but even more important is asking what kind of leadership fills it. Here's what I like to call the essentials for leadership, the three C's: clarity, courage, and capacity. So let's think of a stormy sea. The captain doesn't control the waves, but they can point to the lighthouse and say, that's where we're headed. On one campus, I worked with a president who made a point of every meeting with the same anchor with its leadership team. Our priority this year is stabilizing enrollment while protecting student belonging. Simple, repeatable, and grounding, and realistic, right? So we know that enrollment, we faced a cliff, we have uneven enrollment, but in this campus, in this case, their enrollment had sort of leveled out. And so they wanted to keep it there so they could continue to meet their enrollment targets. And they also wanted to make sure that the students were there stayed because we know as administrators, it's balancing both, right? Keeping enrollment stable and then keeping the students who are there. So this anchor was important because it gave everybody sort of where we're going, what we need to be focused on. So this matters because leadership, the pipeline of leadership is fragile. So if you are a leader who focuses on clarity, this is very helpful. According to the American College Presidents Survey, the average president is around 60 years old, and nearly half expect to step down within 5 years. That kind of turnover means clarity isn't optional, it's the glue that outlasts any one leader. And I'm going to come back to this point in a minute with these demographics. But for now, try this. If you're not driving, jot this down. What is your one sentence anchor for this semester? say it out loud, notice how it feels, and that's clarity in practice. Now, if you don't have an anchor sentence, try to come up with one. You'll have an opportunity to sort of brainstorm in the downloadable worksheet that's attached to the show note. But think about having your anchor. It's important. Again, but clear direction can still feel hollow if we don't have the courage to stand by it. So, courage in leadership isn't bravado, it's the willingness to say the hard truth and then invite people into it. As a department chair, I really did my best to be clear, right? Sugarcoating didn't help at all. And I saw that happen with other leaders, and I was really mindful that to the degree that I could, really put information out there. I tried to do that as much as I could, right? So there was a time where we had some unexpected budget cuts, and rather than kind of dance around it, I just went in and told the faculty, yep, we're being cut, right? It will hurt. We won't be able to do some of the things that I and we had wanted to do, but let's sit in this faculty retreat and decide together what we want to protect. That was honesty paired with a process. And so I was very mindful to include the faculty in the process so that there was a sense of shared ownership. And I think we fared well during that time. So here's a bigger picture. The academic impression survey that I mentioned earlier found that low trust in leadership is most strongly linked to whether leaders communicate with transparency and courage. In other words, people can handle tough news, but they really can't handle silence. So, where do you need to show more courage this semester? Naming the real issue, setting a boundary, or calling people back to what matters. Clarity sets direction, courage builds trust, but without capacities, leaders collapse under the weight of disruption. So here's another example. A VP stretched across 10 committees, expected to solve every crisis. Sure, they're brilliant, but they're exhausted. And when the leader burns out, the team does too. We have seen this time and time again. So, capacity isn't about doing more, it's about building systems and teams that can hold the weight together. And here's another piece of the puzzle: who is leading, how long they stay, and why they leave. According to the American College Presidents Study of 2023, two-thirds of presidents are men, nearly three-quarters are white, and the average age is 60. More than half say they plan to step down within 5 years. And with that being said, a wave of turnover is coming very fast. We're really already in it. On paper, women and people of color are gaining ground, but the reality is very fragile. Research shows that women leaders, especially women of color, often spend less time in these roles than their male white counterparts. Why? Because they're judged more harshly, evaluated against narrower ideas of what real leadership looks like, and given less margin for error. When I was in a fellowship some years ago, I heard story after story of women of color carrying the weight of proving themselves twice over, only to be second guessed more quickly than others. And yet, the paradox lies here. Studies show that women leaders often bring strengths in collaboration, problem solving, and inclusive decision making. A 2022 𝗬𝗂𝗶𝗁 study even found that institutions with women executives tend to have stronger pipelines for women at every leadership position. In other words, when women lead, they don't just fill the seat, they change systems. Have you noticed leaders being evaluated differently on your campus, especially women or leaders of color? What impact does that have on their tenure, on the climate, and for everyone else? This is why clarity, courage, and capacity aren't abstract virtues. For many leaders, especially underrepresented leaders, they're survival tools. And they're tools all of us can practice so leadership isn't so rare or short lived. But every leadership gap isn't only about presidents, provosts, or deans, it's about you. When I coach faculty, I remind them the way you hold space for your students during uncertainty, that's leadership. When I coach emerging administrators, I tell them your ability to connect colleagues across silos, that's leadership. We don't just need leadership from the top. We need distributed leadership practiced daily in every corner of the campus. Where can you step into leadership this week, even without a title or formal authority? Remember, disruption will keep coming. It isn't new. But what's new is the scale of leadership gaps that it exposes. And some might suggest that we just see it more clearly now because of the level of disruption. Maybe it was always this way, but this gives us opportunities. Now, the data tells us trust is wavering, the pipeline is aging, diversity is lagging, and campuses are hungry for direction, courage, and capacity. But there's hope. Leadership is not titled, it is a practice. And every one of us can practice it by offering clarity, showing courage, and expanding capacity. So I invite you, don't wait for leadership to arrive from above. Step into it where you are. Now, if this episode sparks something for you, please download the reflection and action guide linked to the show notes and capture your answers. Then turn them into steps and then share them with your team. I'm Dr. Loren Hill, and this has been Your Strategist is In. Until next time, lead with clarity, courage, and capacity.